Okay, first question. Do you have any stories about Mer Mercado or Modesto, California? Um, no, not really. Uh, I'm actually not entirely sure where Modesto is, so I'm sorry. I don't think I've. It's entirely possible that I played in Modesto, but it seems like the kind of place that would be like you would play on like a bigger tour. Like it would be the kind of place that would have like an amphitheater that was like sort of out in the middle of nowhere. Um, Not to say that Modesto is the middle of nowhere, but like we played on that Rejects tour a couple of years ago. We played like in Bakersfield, which was cool, but it was sort of like, um, it was just sort of there wasn't just really anything to do there. So, yeah, okay, man. TikTok gives you a lot of fucking like random tags and shit. Okay, well, I'm not gonna look at that for much longer. So on over on the Substack, random question: can you tell us about Tijuana Crime Scene? Okay, so Tijuana Crime Scene was a band in Lawrence, Kansas that was started by my friend Alex, who started. We met Alex, the sound, the bottom more him to be touring front of house sound guy. He then manager, and he currently works for I forget the name of the company, but he works with like Big Head Todd and stuff like that, which is how New Am's ended up on that like Big Head Todd tour back in the day. But he started this project called Tijuana Crime Scene. Alex, for me, is the person who got me into like more like alt country, like singer songwriter stuff, like especially Steve Earle. He's the person who turned me on to Steve Earle. And this band called Tijuana Crime Scene ended up being him playing piano and singing, and then Rob Pope playing bass, and then our friend Jake Cardwell playing drums. And so those were also the three guys who played on the first New Amsterdam's record, which it was kind of around that same time period, so around like 99 2000. And Tijuana Crime Scene, which I believe is one of those like sex euphemisms like a Cleveland Steamer or Rusty Trombone or something like that. But yeah, I covered one of their songs on the New Am's record Para Toda Vida. The song called Forever Leaving is a Tijuana Crime Scene song. So that answers your question. Uh, thank you. I'm glad you like my shirt. Let's see here. All right, we're gonna go over to the gram. Okay. So, when you're writing songs, is it done as a group? Okay. When you're writing songs as Get Up Kids, is it done as a group, or does someone come up with an idea for a song and you go from there? Does everyone? I assume you mean everyone contribute to the writing. So, the Get Up Kids started off as a songwriting. Like our first couple of releases were written like very collaboratively, and it was sort of like just coming, which is why some of those songs, like if you listen to 4 Minute Mile, some of the like, well, even more so like songs like Woodson, where like they don't make a whole lot of sense from like a song structure perspective, but uh, so we would write collaboratively, and then when we did Something at Home About and Wire and Guilt Show, it tended to get more into like Jim or I, and then sometimes on Wire. Actually, no, not less on Something at Home About, but on the other two records, that everybody else would bring in like song ideas, and then we would flesh them out. And so like that was more of a like I would bring in like you can kind of hear the demos if you bought the Something at Home About like deluxe edition. You can hear the on the demos how some of those songs sound like they're complete songs as acoustic demos, but they don't really become Get Up Kid songs until everybody, I like to say, until everybody puts their stink on it. But then at some point after that, like when we did Rules and Problems, we decided to go back to the kind of collaborative um, songwriting style, because for me, that is sort of a self-preservation sort of thing of like I don't want to like put a lot of time and effort and care into a song that I really fall in love with, then bring it to the band and have them be like, this sucks, or, this isn't what we like. And so what I will do is sometimes is come up with like kind of a riff or like a part and then bring them there. So that's how we write now. That's how we've been writing. Uh, let's see. So I guess I have to look if I'm going to look at TikTok, I have to look at my phone to see if there are any questions. So I'll just have to kind of keep an eye on that. But in the meantime, we'll go back to the Substack. Listening to Guilt Show, great production still holds up. That would be Mr. Ed Rose at our old recording studio, the Black Lodge, which was a studio that we had in Eudora, Kansas. I wanted to say, so I'll let you guys have some time. There's a couple of things that I wanted to talk about. Um, I did a post yesterday. So I've the last 2 weeks on my Substack, I've done these posts where I'm doing these sort of deep dives into New Amsterdam's lore, as it were. Though that sounds kind of cringy to say you're talking about your own lore, but I just wanted to do these sort of like stories behind the records and the songs, because a lot of that New Am stuff is kind of like I'm trying to think of ways for it to be sort of like you know like you I'm trying to remember that. I think me, it's like I just want to be like, okay, if this next song that I write, the next thing that I do, the newest thing that I have, that's going to be the thing that like takes it over the edge, and like, everyone's going to like fall in love with that or whatever. But when I do that, I tend to sort of like downplay the catalog, and like I've been, doing both Get Up Kids and New Ams and solo stuff and other projects for nearly 30 years at this point. So there's a whole lot of stuff to like kind of go back and re-listen to. And then I'm a little burnt on the whole like anniversary. Uh, it seemed like a way to like kind of like honor like these older songs without it being like sort of like a money grab. And I mean, you can subscribe to the Substack and like pay money if you want to, but it's not really like you don't have to. It's basically free. If you'd like to contribute to it, that's cool. It helps me out. But so I've been doing these kind of deep dives into these New Am songs, and I think that's what the Substack is going to be for a while now. And so I would like to get some feedback on what songs in particular you guys would like to know more about, and of the New Am's catalog. And the one that I did this last week was a song called "Never Treat Others," which is a song about a time when I was drunk at a bar in New York City, and I met someone that another musician that I really looked up to, and the interaction didn't go very well. They were drunk, I was drunk, and it just sort of, it really made me feel shitty. And so I had this kind of revelation and this sort of, I don't know. I just declared that I didn't want to treat people who liked. I didn't want for someone else to be in the situation I was in and to say something complimentary to me and to like what I do and then have a bad experience with me. And so I'm not perfect, but it's something that I try to do. And so I try to, if I'm going to be in a situation where I'm going to be around people, to try to always be kind to people. And if I'm really like having a hard time or if I'm in a dark place, then to just try and isolate and like not be around. Um, you know, uh, I'd rather not talk to someone than have them walk away from the experience with a negative reaction to it. And so I was a little nervous in putting out the kind of explanation of that song because I'm kind of redeclaring this sort of thing of that I don't want to treat other people that way. But I did also used to drink a lot, and so it's entirely possible that in you know in an altered state of mind that I would have been rude to somebody, and or that I would have been preoccupied with something else and been rude inadvertently. And so I was nervous about putting this out, but it has been really, really positive. Huge relief to me that like people would feel that way because I really don't want to make people feel like they're not appreciated by me. So that's a long way of saying thank you for the positive response to the Substack from yesterday. And if you haven't read it yet, then please go subscribe and check it out. It's something I've really enjoyed doing. And again, if there are other songs that um, you'd like me to do deeper dives on, I was initially thinking about just sticking with the one album, but I think I'm going to jump around. The one I've been thinking about lately is the song "The Spoils of the Spoiled," which is off of "Worse for the Wear," and so I thought that might be the next thing that I talk about. So that's my one of the things that I wanted to talk about that I just wanted to get off my chest. But now we'll go back to questions. Okay. Fortunate Fool. I'd have to go back and listen to uh really dig the deep dives. That's cool. Okay, so New York City venues. So I've been doing these kind of like walk and talks and well, drive and talk, where I've just been sort of like reminiscing about, whenever you go to a city on tour, when you've been going there for as long as I have, you kind of start to reminisce about like the early days, the first times. And then especially, I think what made me think about it was I'm playing at Bottom of the Hill in San Francisco next month. And it's going to be the last time I ever play there. And it was one of the first places I ever played at in San Francisco. And it's closing this year. And so that made me really kind of reminisce. And then, fucking Chain Reaction closed. And, there was just a big article in, what was that, in Rolling Stone maybe, about how Chicago venues are struggling. And they were talking to someone from Metro. And that worries me a lot because that's one of my favorite clubs in the country. So I've just been thinking about that. And so someone's asking about New York City in particular. And of all the things, so they got Bowery, so Bowery Ballroom. I got engaged. Okay, we'll go through these one at a time. I got engaged at the Bowery Ballroom. Mercury Lounge, I have not played. I believe that's where I'm playing on this tour, which will be the first time. CBGB's, I played several times. Our first tour in New York City, we played at CBGB's on a mashup show. So it was us, Braid, Ethel Meserve were the emo bands, and then it was Spaz, Monster X, and 97A, which were the hardcore bands. And so they staggered the bill on a Sunday matinee, and it would be like hardcore band, hardcore fans, and then everybody would leave, and then emo band, emo fans, and then everybody would leave, and then hardcore band, hardcore fan. And we tell these stories about how back in the day, like when the scene was kind of smaller and it was before the internet, that like everything was sort of a mashup. Like in Kansas City, it would be like a hardcore band. Any given show would be us, Coalesce, the Gadgets, who were a ska band at the time, and just anybody. Like it all just kind of went together because it was just counterculture. It wasn't anything like a scene at all. But when you got to New York, the scenes were more defined because there's more people, and just because like the scene there was so much more like the hardcore scene in particular was so like kind of rigid, and like wasn't really something that we fit into. But anyway, so that was CVGB's. What were the other places you said? Knitting Factory I just played a couple years ago. Coney Island High was we used to play all the time, really early days. Uh, Never played at Tramps, but yeah, Coney Island High uh was one of those places where it was sort of like it seemed like every time we played at Coney Island High, we were always like the early show, and then we had to do what they call a disco loadout, which is if you have an early show that it has to be over by 9, but then the late show, the first band goes on at 10, or lately now when you do a disco loadout, it's usually a DJ that is, if you're playing like a Friday night at like a club that turns into like a dance party so they can actually make money, then the you every time we played at Coney Island High, there would always be another show after ours, so we'd always have to like get off stage soaking wet, can't go to the merch table to sell any merch. He's got to like load straight out through the crowd. And so then people would be like, "Hey, good show," or "Hey, you sign this or whatever?" And you'd have to be like, this is where you can get into that sort of, if I was rude to someone because like the club's yelling at me to load out, and I'm trying to be as polite as I can and be like, "Thank you for coming. Come to the merch table afterwards." And so yeah, that's what I think of when I think of Coney Island High. Um, let's see here. So, okay, we're just gonna, well, all right. We can do these like walk and talks about. I mean, I guess when I start doing because like I'm trying to kind of the walk and talks about you know New York City clubs is always going to be interesting. There's always something. It's usually honestly a lot of my New York City stories. The more interesting ones are when we weren't playing, but because usually when you're playing in New York, it's a lot of like hustle because it's a lot of like it's a chaotic load in. It's a quick sound check, and then it's like get the fuck out of there as fast as you can. So, um, okay, so asking about the song X's and O's. X's and O's is a New Amsterdam song. It was a B-side that was then on the record called Outroduction. And it's really just sort of kind of a divorce song. I got really for a while there towards the end of New Am's around the at the foot of my rival period, I got into these sort of writing about like the concept of divorce and like other people's divorces. I feel like a lot of the people I knew who got married as young as I did got divorced fairly young too. I didn't, but I thought it was an interesting thing to write about. So, uh, and plus it was sort of like and it was, I guess it was kind of like a anti-love song to a certain degree, but it's basically just sort of like, um, it's kind of like a friends with benefit or like yeah, a friends with benefits sort of thing where like one person wants to leave the other one and the other person wants to still kind of like fuck basically. And so that's what that song's about. But honestly, that one was more the groove of it is what I really liked. The sort of like train beat, like country groove, and then like the lap steel and then later on the pedal steel that was put into it. Like it was just sort of like dabbling into like kind of country music with still sort of like my songwriting sensibility, which is, but and it's got this sort of like cool like train song sort of beat to it. So. Did you ever play at Stalag 13 in Philly? Yes, I did. And then not only did I play at Stalag 13 because we were actually not supposed to, ended up having to do a double bill there because we were playing at some other venue uh that got shut down like the day we were supposed to play there. And so we got moved to Stalag and we had to do two shows. So we had to do like a 5 p.m. show and a 7 p.m. show. And, if you remember that place, it was not very well ventilated. And so it was extremely hot. And it was like, I think the second show suffered just from the amount of exhaustion because, like, you know, it's kind of like sprinting. Sometimes doing shows in like really, really hot spaces like that is a lot like you're really getting into like an anaerobic state. You're getting your heart rate up and you're sweating a lot and you're like really just putting everything that you can out there. And then if you then have to like come down from that, and then find a way to like get back up to it again. It's really, really difficult to do. And I mean, unless you're doing drugs, and then maybe you can bump yourself up. I mean, that's the whole like the Beatles and Hamburg thing, like, you know, ending up on speed because you gotta keep playing. So that was solid. Let's see over on the gram. Any questions on the gram? Do. There are. Okay, so let's see. Questions on Instagram. Do you know how long you get to play at the Kansas Music Hall of Fame ceremony in May? Uh, okay, so if you don't know about this, we recently got invited to be inducted into the Kansas Music Hall of Fame. And uh it's not it I'm very thankful that we got invited. It is kind of an odd gig. You know, it's a uh but we're very grateful that we got asked, and then we're playing this. I don't think I've ever played like a ceremony before. I guess we did that Bernie thing, and that was kind of like more of a formal um you know, endeavor, but yeah, I think we're playing for like 20 minutes, and I think we're the closing act. I don't know a whole lot about it. I need to probably get a suit of some sort to wear to that. But yeah, we're getting inducted into the Kansas Music Hall of Fame. So if you want to come to that, it's at Liberty Hall in Lawrence, Kansas. I believe May 20th, 30th. I don't remember. Would the Getter Kids ever return to Warp Tour or you? So this question's come up a couple of times lately because there's a bunch of like Warp Tour stuff like happening now. Getter Kids really played Warp Tour. Actually no, let me rephrase that. Warp. Um, we so we're on the local state in that night. We were on the local stage at Warp Kansas, and that year they them is were like 12, and we were on stage at 01. So like people were just like kind of trickling in. And for some reason, then we got asked to play on that same run, added onto the Warp Tour in Oklahoma and in St. Louis. And so we drove the van to those two shows and absolutely hated it. It was too fucking hot. Um, it was just bad vibes. And so we were like, this sucks. We're never going to do this again. And we didn't. So I don't know why. Well, I mean, I do know why people kind of misremember things sometimes, and they kind of just assume that we've been a Warped Tour band, but we never have been. So, and don't intend to be. So, no. To the long answer to your very short question is that we never have, and we most likely never will. But you know, you know, they could back a truckload of money up and I'd change my mind. But they probably won't do that. So, but thank you for your question. And it's a common sort of misconception. I was going to ask if you would ever put out a book with maybe the lyrics to each song and the story behind them all. I would look in a heartbeat. I don't know if I'm going to put out a book of lyrics. But like that's kind of what I'm trying to do with the Substack is do these sort of deep dives on each of the songs and like what they're about. I could see, I don't know, maybe if I keep doing the Substack thing, maybe that'll take physical form at some point. But I'm not a big fan of just lyric books, like in the kind of like book of poetry sort of way. But, you know, again, I don't know. It's not something that like I'm more interested in like writing essays right now and like kind of memoir-y kind of stuff than like lyric books. But you know, um, if you like that kind of stuff, you should check out the Substack. Uh, you can subscribe to it, and that's what I've been doing over there. Is just doing like deep dives on things. Questions. There was the Warp Tour question. Uh, sorry about the Warp. Sorry, we're not going to Warp Tour. Actually, I'm not. I don't want to play Warp Tour. Your show at BFF in Vegas was great. I'm glad that you had fun at that. I thought it was good too. I was struggling because I had lost my voice. So whenever you do something at the end of a tour, you run the risk of getting vocal fatigue. And I had lost my voice when we were in Milwaukee. And so we had to take a day off to recover. And then I had to sing 2 shows in Chicago. And then we were going to fly to Vegas to play Best Friends Forever. And I would say my voice was at about 85%, which is pretty good, but it's not where I wanted it to be. And then the frustrating part of that whole experience was that like there were people who were roaming around backstage there that I hadn't seen in 20 years. And I wanted to like talk to them and I couldn't because I needed to be on vocal rest so that I could sing. And so it was kind of frustrating to just sort of be like, yeah, you have to do this sort of like, you know, kind of thing so that people know that you're not trying to use your voice. And so that's one of the things that like you don't have to worry about if you're not a singer. So, but I'm glad that it came across like I knew what I was doing and it sounded good. Do you ever get sent old show flyers that you've never seen before that have shocked you or you don't remember? Like the infamous Monster X. So you brought up the Monster X thing. So I'll never forget the Monster X show at CBGB's. Like that was one that I'll reference till the day I die. Um, Sometimes I see flyers that I don't remember shows. I remember the tour we were on. Um, you know, early days, like 97, 98, early 99, I remember really, really well. And then once we started touring in a tour bus, which would have been the end of 1999, things start to kind of blur together because you don't have that sort of van adventure thing anymore where like you're trying to figure out where you're going. Like you just wake up where you are. And so everything sort of feels the same. But like those first couple tours when we were like, especially the ones where we were like crashing on people's floors and playing in basements and stuff like that, I remember really well. And so like so oftentimes I can like pick out where those shows are at if you show me photos of them. And if you show me the thing is, this is kind of I don't know if you ever thought about this, but like we didn't see the flyers very often. So like oftentimes when I see old flyers, they're surprising to me because no one ever gave us the flyers. We just booked the show and then the flyers were just distributed locally. So sometimes it'll be like you see a flyer because it used to be a thing, and I don't know if they still do this, where it would be like this was a big thing in Europe where it would be like emo band from Midwest is and so like you see something that says that and it would be like okay. But yeah, I think that answers your question. Does the PO box mentioned in 4 Minute Mile still exist? No, that was 30 years ago. Did people send you a lot of mail? No. And did record label receive more of the mail? The only the only mail we ever really got was either to purchase our first 7-inch or rejection letters from record labels that we sent the first demos to. We used to have like a collection of rejection letters from like Warner Brothers and shit like that back before we got huge. That's a do 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 do. Um, any plans on returning to Toronto though with any project? Yeah, of course. We love Toronto. Toronto's the only Canada show we played on the Something at Home About tour. Unfortunately, uh, we just kind of ran out of time. I would love to go do solo stuff, maybe even like house shows in Canada. Um, I'd love to get back to to Toronto and to Montreal. And some of the like actually had a really good show in London, Ontario one time. So that's you know the kind of thing that I would be into, but we'll have to see. It's hard to like make the time for all this shit. Best memory from the Terrible Twos records. If you're not familiar, the Terrible Twos was basically the New Amsterdam's band, but it's when my kids were little. So this would have been like 2007, 2008, 2009. And I did two albums that were, basically New Amsterdam's ish songs, but they were about like bugs and dinosaurs and shit. And so they were marketed as like children's music. And they were actually pretty well received in that genre, I guess. Like kids' music press really liked them, which you don't really know is a thing unless you are involved. Like even as a parent, I didn't know there was such a thing as like people who do record reviews of children's albums. And so the weirdest memory I have from the Terrible Twos is that I got a call to a meeting with showrunner at Nickelodeon. The guy who did that show, if you have like, do you have any ideas for a kids show? And I was like, no. Do you have any kids shows that you need songs written for? Because that's not like developing a TV show is not really, you know, my thing. But so that's what I think about when I think about the Terrible Twos. That and playing at the kids music stage at Lollapalooza was pretty interesting. Uh, I've never seen more rock star level like terms thrown by artists than I have in the children's music industry. It's a very strangely cutthroat and bizarre world, and I didn't care for it very much. And now my kids are old, so I don't really do that stuff anymore. So we got good questions on the I feel like as soon as we get like one on uh you hate it when it's around, haha. No, I don't hate it when people give me stuff. I don't need stuff. A couple of times lately people have given me cookbooks, which is kind of cool because they know I like to cook. Um and I thought that was pretty cool. I don't need any I mean I don't need anything really. I appreciate the sentiment though. Um but yeah, no, you can give me stuff. One time in Philadelphia, this kid came up to me and he was on a skateboard and he gave me a box. And he's like, "This is a present for you. Don't worry, it's not a bomb." And that just scared the shit out of me because then he just like skated off on a skateboard and we opened it and it turned out to be like his band's demo and their like press pack and stuff. So he was right. It wasn't a bomb, but it was still kind of a weird interaction. If you need a photographer when you come back to Toronto, okay, hit me up. What's the most interesting or rarest, weirdest thing a fan has asked you to sign? Uh, a couple of times I've signed people's arms that they have then gotten tattoos of, and I've tried to talk them out of it every time. Because I think that's kind of I that one's sort of but it's your body. It's you do whatever you want. My buddy Ivan just got a tattoo of a lyric from the Salt and Sea record, and he had me write it out in my handwriting, so it's actually in my handwriting. But there have been times when people have asked me to sign their women have asked me to sign their breasts, and I don't do that. That's not. This one time it was in Orlando. at one of the Where's the Band shows, I think, where this woman was like, "You can sign my boobs. My husband doesn't mind." And I was just like, I don't think that really does much for either of our marriages if I do that. And it just didn't feel right, so I didn't do it. Um, Also, I can try to send you a locals friend. Okay. If you would like to talk to me about playing in Toronto, hit me up, DM me, or mattpryorsongs@gmail.com is the email address. Can hit me up with stuff. Hello. Damn, could have made it on Nickelodeon. Yeah, I don't know. What's your favorite song to play and or listen to off Guilt Show? Um, I liked a lot of Guilt Show, actually. Uh, Up until we did Problems, Guilt Show was my favorite Get Up Kids record. And so the let's see here. The There's a song on Guilt Show on the back half of Guilt Show called Dark Night of the Soul. That is a song about uh getting sober. And so it's this interesting thing. There's a lot of stuff about alcoholism on Guilt Show. There's a song called Sympathy, which is about someone else getting sober. And Dark Night of the Soul, which is about someone else getting sober. And it's just interesting that 20 years later is when I got sober and how I had written these things that ended up being sort of prophetic for myself. There's a couple new Am songs that are like that too, where it seems like I'm writing to my future self. Um, like it's almost my wife says that like it's like I came back from the future to 2003 and wrote songs for myself in 2023. So it's kind of interesting. And that was one of the things like in early recovery, like I wasn't like I know I've been around a lot of people who have gotten sober. I wasn't it was a new experience when it ended up being me being the one who had to do it. So yeah, Dark Night of the Soul. Plus anytime I get to use the word bastard, I always enjoy because it's sort of like a swear word that isn't a swear word. And it just has a lot of impact, like phonetically, like just like it's just got a lot of punch to it, you know? It's like saying motherfucker, but a little bit more poetic, I guess would be the where are the red glasses? They're in my bedroom. Was Action in Action the first Get Up Kids music video? Yes, it was. Let's see. I'm looking at TikTok, but I feel like I'm just going to look like a crazy person looking at my phone. So we'll go back to the Substack. Do, 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 do. Congrats on the induction in the Kansas Music Hall of Fame. Can you say how long your set will be at the, oh, I guess I answered that one already. 20 minutes. I think it's at the end of the ceremony. But again, I don't know a whole lot about it. Um, yeah. Conversation is amazing. Conversation is the last song on Guilt Show. And it is a almost a rebuttal of the minimalism of On a Wire, in particular James's piano playing, because he was very much stifled. There's not a whole lot of piano on a wire other than like just organ, like organ chords. And so when it got to conversation, it was like, fucking go nuts, dude. You're an amazing piano player. Like, and so there's this weird ass jazz piano solo at the end of that song. And it's fun as hell to play because that riff is really cool in like a Zeppelin-y sort of way. So that's one of my favorites too, is Conversation. Yeah, and then to you're saying like it's funny that you say that's the record when nobody was communicating with each other. So yeah, we're talking about Guilt Show, and yeah, we were not getting along. I mean, pockets were getting along, but like we were kind of forcing it, I think, and so I think you can hear it, but I still think the record's really good. Let's see more questions. I know you already explained about signature tattoos, but how do you feel about people getting Get Up Kids robot tattoos? I don't care. It's, I mean, I mean, it's not that I don't care. I'm appreciative that you like that record enough to get the artwork tattooed on you. That's it. I don't know. Like I have a Get Up Kids tattoo. This is a Get Up Kids tattoo. This is from our split 7-inch with Rocket from the Crypt. And so that's mine. But the ones that I think are more interesting are when it's like something that's a little bit less obvious, whether it's lyrics or I've seen a couple of New Am's tattoos. There was a guy in Boise who had the Killed or Cured bee on his chest. I saw a Terrible Twos tattoo one time in Florida. Um, I saw somebody who had "We're loyal like brothers" on their neck, which seemed a little metal for my songwriting sensibilities, but it's their body, they could do whatever they want. It's an interesting compliment because it's sort of like it's funny too because it's like usually the artwork is not something I had anything to do with. And so it's kind of like I love your song, therefore I got a piece of artwork that you didn't create. And that's just kind of I'm not complaining about it. I just think it's kind of funny. I mean, I don't know how else you would interpret, unless I guess if you did lyrics, you could do that, but it's just kind of a funny thing. Um, just want to say thank you for my custom song. It was 10 years ago, and you played it first dance. Also, we moved from New York to Massachusetts, walked around the Pike. So they're saying thank you. I wrote them. So if you are unfamiliar, I do custom songs for people, and this time of year with Valentine's Day being right around the corner, I do custom love songs, which you can still order right now. I'm taking orders until Friday because I think 10, 11, 12, 13. Yeah. Oh, well, then maybe I'm only taking orders till Thursday because Valentine's Day is on Saturday. And so if you want a song to give as a Valentine's Day gift, a love song to give as a Valentine's Day gift, written and performed by me about whatever you want, get your order in now or get it in by Thursday so that I have time to do it. But I'm glad that you liked it. So I've been doing these for like over a decade now, these custom songs, and people oftentimes just tell me that I wrote them a song, but they don't tell me if they like it. They'll just come up to me at a show and be like, "Hey, you wrote us a song." And I'm always kind of like, "And did you like it?" And then if one of them says, "Yeah, it made the other one cry," then I'm just like, "Then I did my job." Do you ever get to keep any of the props from music videos, like the robot from Satellite? Uh, I've never really asked. Um, I know that the neon sign that's in the Action and Action video was actually Jim's. I think I want to say his grandma got it for him, like as a present, and we used it in the video, but I don't know whatever happened to it. I don't really have much interest in video props, to be honest. So I don't, I've never kept them. Uh, is it difficult? Okay, this should be good. Is it difficult being sober when you have to be around it most days, nights, and friends are still drinking and doing drugs and such? So yes, it is. And when I first started planning on going on tour, I would go to recovery meetings and I would tell them about how I was nervous about. There's this concept in recovery where they say you want to change your playgrounds and playmates, and that means that like you know, you don't want to go hang out where you used to drink and you don't want to hang out with the people you used to drink with. But that's my job, is to go to the places I used to drink at and perform and to go with the people that I used to drink with, which is my bandmates. And so we had to have a kind of conversation about that. And because, you know, me getting sober doesn't mean that they need to. So what we determined was that the tour bus would be a dry space, would be a sober, like safe space for me. And then, everywhere, like the dressing room was where all the booze would be. And then they would keep a cooler in like the bay under the tour bus, and like if they wanted to like drink after the show but not go out to a bar, they would just hang out in the parking lot, and I would hang out on the bus, which ended up being kind of nice because then the bus was like really quiet, sort of chill after the show. But yeah, it's this is gonna be so 2 months after getting sober, I did my first tour, and it was with Kevin Devine, who is also a sober person, and that was really helpful. But yeah, it's sort of like I'm almost at 3 years sober, and so I'm more used to it now. But I'm around alcohol a lot for someone who's in recovery. And honestly, I just feel so much better without it that it doesn't really bother me as much anymore. There are times when like the smell will get to me, or if someone is really drunk at a show and they're like close talking me, that kind of gets on my nerves. But for the most for the most part, I've gotten used to it. But it is a difficult uh, lifestyle to maintain, especially in the beginning. But it is doable. That's, I guess, the important thing to take away from all this. Wow, this has flown by. Okay, so a few more questions. What's the meaning behind 10 minutes? You'd have to ask Jim. That's his deal. I'll tell you what, as a sober person, I don't appreciate that people are smoking vapes and weed like it's cigarettes. Smoking never bothered me that much. I was always the only one who didn't smoke. Um, so it's never been something that's really bugged me that much. Uh, I I initially thought it was weird when smoking started getting banned in clubs, but now it's like you go to the occasional club and it's like you can still smoke here. Like you can still smoke, and maybe it's in Kentucky, and then you're like, Jesus, this is gross. Like, how did we ever do this? Um, yeah. Any more plans for Where's the Band tours? Not at Not currently, no. The Where's the Band tours were very difficult to organize because you basically had to. That's why we only ever really did them in January, because you basically had to find a time when 4 or 5 different bands had enough free time for us to get together and do something like that. I do love all those guys, and I'd love to like do something together again, but it's just a difficult thing to do to plan. I think it's been 10 years since we've done one, which is a crazy thing to think about. Um, well, I think we're getting to the end of the questions. Uh, though I will check to see if there are any more. So if you have any other questions, in the meantime, I'd like to talk to you about something. And that is that I've been doing these songwriting workshops. And one of the things that like has come up in them a lot is this concept of imposter syndrome. And I think that that's something that I would like to just sort of like touch on, because it's something that's, as I'm getting more into like doing, I'm trying to figure out how to use social media in like a positive way that doesn't feel like I'm like selling something all the time, because I think, I'm a little bit older, and like I think when we started using social media in the music industry, it was just treated as like marketing, right? And it's just like, this is where you post your tour announcements. And I think that I've always been hesitant about just being open and like doing stuff like this, like these AMAs, because I always felt like, like who cares what I think, and that's always kind of surprising to people, because like I am a performer. I'm the lead singer of a band. I'm in front of people all the time, but I still have that. I still have those feelings of like, you know, nobody cares. Like, I think I am doing this sort of stuff. And that's imposter syndrome. And so the point I'm trying to make is that like, because like when I will kind of oftentimes will bring up like good to tell them, and this is something you like. If you like what you've created and there are other people who have the same sort of tastes that you do, then in theory, they're going to like the thing that you created as well. And that was always sort of the operating principle of like the early Get Up Kids stuff, and that I've sort of carried on in my own life that I lost sight of. That you have to believe that, like, if you and I other band, right? Something that I like, then maybe you would like, you have to just kind of